And to help us delve into that conversation much deeper, I'm joined by Professor Washington Okeyo, who is the Vice Chancellor of MUA, that is Management University of Africa. Professor, karibu sana.
Thank you very much, John Troy.
And now, perhaps to begin us, even before we go to the learning itself, I would like to hear something from you. Of course, you are a scholar. So yesterday, we always say back to school, but now, of course, Professor Magoha has alluded to back to caning. Do you think that would offer a solution?
Yes, thank you very much, John Troy. And I think I need to start with my background before we go on. My name, as you have said, is Professor Washington Okeyo. I am the Vice Chancellor of the Management University of Africa. And Management University of Africa is a university that specializes and focuses on the niche of leadership and management. That is our main focus and area of training. And we train students at various levels, from diploma to undergraduate to master's to PhD, all focusing on various aspects of management and leadership. So I'm very glad to be here, John Troy. Now, going back to the question that you've just asked about the CSS pronouncement, that we need to go back to corporal punishment or caning of students at lower levels. I think it is good to understand the premise on which the CSS statement came from. Mm-hmm. It is looked at as there is some level of indiscipline. Mm-hmm. Amongst our students, especially at the secondary school or high school level. Mm-hmm. And this has manifested in the wanton destruction of school property. Mm-hmm. In terms of burning. Several schools have been burnt mm-hmm. down, and suspected arsonists mm-hmm. are definitely the students, because mm-hmm. they're the people who live within. Mm-hmm. And probably there could be some additional hand outside, the school premises. Mm-hmm. But then it is suspected that the students could be, have played a role. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the reasons why the CS said, Professor Magoha said that we probably need to relook at the reintroduction of caning. Because during the time when we used to have caning in schools, mm-hmm. That level of punishment, there was a lot more discipline, and mm-hmm. there was less indiscipline in various schools. Because I remember when I was going to school myself, there are things which I did which were not good, in terms of administration. Mm-hmm. And I was caned. I was given corporal punishment. Mm-hmm. In my school, we used to be asked to dig logs of wood, and until you finish, that is when you go back to school. Mm-hmm. You would be expelled from school, you would be suspended from school, and be asked to bring back your, to come back with your parents. Mm-hmm. So I think the freedom which the current students have is what is leading to these problems. Mm-hmm. And we really need to think twice. It is not a matter of whether. To me, it is a matter of, we should do it and almost immediately. But it needs to be done in a systematic manner. Of course, there are laws that have outlawed caning in schools, mm-hmm. and so on and so forth. This needs to be looked at so that we can create laws which then will give us a good student, sort of discipline mm-hmm. As and when they go for learning in the schools. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And still on the same, I do remember in the early 2000s, I was at the Technical University. Back then it was Kenya Polytechnic. And I do remember together with Nairobi University, the two institutions were notorious for strikes that would polarize the whole city. But looking at the last couple of years, we've never heard of a university that has had a strike that polarizes the city. We have a few elements here and there when it comes to tertiary educations. But what are some of the lessons that the high schools could learn from the varsities? Because it's now in schools. Back then we never used to have strikes and burning schools. The universities were doing that. Now it's the shoe is on the other leg. Yes, that is very true, John Troy. And I think there's a lot of leadership issues that come into perspective when you talk about the behavior of human beings and students in this particular case. One thing I know for sure is if the leadership of the schools, which we do at universities, if the leadership of schools could keep students close to them, okay? Because students, especially at the lower level, are way much younger than by the time they're getting to the universities. And what we do in the universities, which the schools can learn directly. Number one, we listen to our students, okay? Because students have got their needs and wants. When they come to the universities, they have their needs and wants. Of course, they're coming to learn. But then in the process of learning, they require accommodation, they require other facilities like food, like dining, catering facilities, and so on and so forth. They require, recreational facilities, they require comfort generally to enable them to concentrate on their education, so that when they are going to classes, they go to classes knowing that when they come out of classes, they are going to have some good sporting facilities to be able to to use. Now, once those ones have been put in place, then what the leadership needs to make sure that they do is to ensure that the students are able to utilize these facilities. When it comes to recreation, for example, just putting a football field out there or a basketball field out there and so on and so forth is not adequate for the students. The administration of the universities go a little further to ensure that they arrange for competitions, between inter-universities, between different institutions and the universities, and more importantly, to help ingrain the discipline and the relationship, to help cement the relationship between the administration and the students. It is important to also have inter-administration and between students and the administration kind of interaction and sporting facilities, so that by the time the students are coming out of class, they are coming out of class knowing that there is my lecturer, who is Professor Okeyo, but at the same time I'm seeing him in the field. So we are actually intertwined at that level. The relationship becomes more cemented. So it is a question of leadership. Number two is a question of listening to what the students are saying. Because students are human beings. Obviously they came to the university to learn, but in the process of learning, since they're human beings, there are other things that may be interfering with their learning process that need to be listened to. So it is anticipating the situation when the students are, say, living in their, in their facilities where they live, in hostels and so on and so forth. Somebody is there looking at, for example, a hostel warden or something like that, who is looking at the welfare of the students as they live within there and listening. So that
at least the students will have a chance to ventilate.
Will have a chance to ventilate, and somebody they can relate with at literally their level. Okay?
Yes.
And then number three is appreciating the role of student leadership. Okay? In our university, that is Management University of Africa, we are very close to the student leaders. Indeed, as a Vice Chancellor, I've left my doors open to the student leaders, and they can walk in anytime. They don't have to go through all the other channels to reach my office. No. They call me directly, they come to my office directly. If they have an issue, we sort it out there and there. And
it seemed to be bearing fruits, because looking at back in the days, university strikes or tertiary educations that were striking were quite a huge number.
Yes.
Okay, back to our discussion today, and it has shown that now almost each and every work that somebody has to do, there's some ICT skills involved.
Yes.
And it's not what exactly we used to have, because when I was doing journalism, a lot has changed from then. We didn't even have online media, but now it has come, and I had to conform with that, despite the fact that I didn't learn that in the learning institution that I was in. I had to take some more classes afterwards. Have you aligned your courses to structure them in a way that they will incorporate what was not incorporated a couple of years ago? Because technology has changed in a very short time.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Now, it is indeed true that technology has actually taken over our lives, and it's controlling our lives. Whatever you do, you have to use technology, whether it is talking to people, whether it is teaching, whether it is any sort of business environment. Technology is taken over. So it is important for us now to ensure that we embrace that technology and that we impart, the technological skills at all levels in education, as we teach students. Now, I start with the challenge. The challenge with technology is that it changes at a pace so fast that it is literally impossible to cope with it. Okay, and then therefore we always find ourselves lagging behind, in terms of trying to cope with technology. And that is where it is important, as you say, that we need to keep constantly changing our curricula, our programs in universities, so that we anticipate what is the next technological change that is going to come into being, so that we are able to address that, and we are able to teach, our students how to, use this incoming technology in their daily lives, and more importantly, not just use it, but more importantly, to be able to apply it, so that even as, as they work, as they learn, and so on and so forth, they embrace technology. So it's very, very important. What we have done at the Management University of Africa is we have a process of tracing our students after they have graduated from the university, so that we can be able to know whether the knowledge that we imparted into our students is really relevant out there as they are in the industry and so on and so forth. Now, through that, we come up with the gaps, because once we trace our students, we interview them, we also interview the employers, and we then get back the feedback, from that process, which tells us that certain components of our programs need some kind of amendment or updating. If it is technology that is required, then we fuse in, some level of or component of ICT in that particular course, so that the next time the incoming students can then be able to learn a more upgraded or updated sort of program.
Hold the thought, Prof. And on that account, let's digest that and take a short, quick break. We'll be right back. Of course, I'm joined by Professor Washington Okeyo, who is the Vice Chancellor of Mua University. We'll be back with that discussion, higher education discussion that we've been having earlier on after this short break. Welcome back, and in case you just joined us, this is KBC News Check, and on this hour we are looking at matters higher education and trying to fuse them with the emerging trends and emerging jobs and the digitization. And Professor Washington Okeyo, Vice Chancellor of Mua University, we are actually trying to see whether we can be able to help our graduates enter into the job market with not only the knowledge but also the skills. And of course, when it comes to the job market and recruitment agencies, I've talked about graduates having the qualifications but they don't have the skills because of the new emerging careers. Now we have CBC. How are you ensuring, and as an institution, how are you ensuring that those two match? The graduates have the knowledge and the skills? Because now the CBC is more on the practicability as opposed to just the knowledge itself.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ben Troy. I think that's a very, very key issue because the reason why people go to learn, one is to acquire knowledge, but number two, and even more importantly, is to be able to apply that knowledge. And that knowledge is usually applied when they graduate from the universities and then they are released into the job market. Either they get themselves self-employment or they are employed by some organizations or institutions. So it's very, very important that bridge between theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge is bridged. And in the Management University of Africa, we have a philosophy called experiential learning. Experiential learning is a cyclic sort of learning process where, you know, students have the experience to learn, you know, to learn how to apply that knowledge, and to also test, you know, that knowledge as they, you know, are learning in the process, so that by the time they finish the acquisition of knowledge or the process of acquiring that knowledge, they are able to actually come up with sort of models that they have created in terms of what is the output. And that is specifically what, you know, CBC actually stresses on. CBC as a system of education, which is being introduced or has been introduced in our society, in our country right now, is a more practical oriented sort of system of education, which seeks to bridge the gap between, because in the previous system, we had what we call knowledge-based learning. But with CBC now, we are coming up with more application-based learning than knowledge-based learning. It's, on the one hand, it is good to acquire the knowledge, but on the other hand, the reason why you acquire the knowledge is to be able to apply it so that you can solve societal problems, you can create, you know, solutions to, human beings, needs and wants. And that is where CBC is coming in. However, I hasten to say that a good system is as good as how it is implemented. So the secret of success of CBC will be in how that CBC system is implemented. If it is implemented according to the plans, and the government has got very good plans that they have put in place. Already, you know, they have started training, teachers at the junior secondary and also at the senior secondary, so that as CBC is being implemented, the teachers and the other staff who are concerned with implementing CBC already have the knowledge on what CBC is expected to do, how it is expected to be implemented. So that implementation process is very, very important. And that is why at university level, although we haven't reached there yet, because you know the transitioning period for CBC, I think there is 2023 when we shall be transiting from junior to senior high school, and then after 3 years, then they offload them into our universities now. So we at university level are already at high gear. In our university, the Management University of Africa, for example, I have set up a committee as the Vice Chancellor that is handling the CBC implementation process.
As of now? As
at now, we have already started. That committee is in place and have come up with the various requirements. For example, we are reviewing our programs to know whether they are aligned. Obviously, they are not aligned to CBC. So what we need to do to these programs to be able to align them to CBC, so that when we receive our students in the next 4 or so years, our programs will already be aligned to CBC. Where our old programs cannot be aligned to CBC, then we create new programs. And obviously CBC is coming with a whole menu of other subjects and programs which probably currently are not being offered, or are being offered, yes, but in a different way. So we must make sure that all the programs that we have are aligned to CBC, and that if the old ones cannot be aligned to CBC, then we create new ones that can be aligned to CBC. Now, the reason why it is important to start early, you're asking me that we have started. Yes, actually I wanted
to ask why now? Yes. You have like 4 years.
Exactly.
Yes.
The process of coming up with programs at university level is a long process, because first of all we have to look at the industry needs. For example, when it comes to this CBC alignment, we have to go back to the documents that the government has prepared about the CBC, and then we have to look at the process of its implementation in the lower levels, that is junior and senior schools, senior grades levels, and then we look at what is it that we need to do as a university to be able to absorb these students. Okay, now once we have done that, then we come up with prototypes of these programs. Once we come up with these prototypes of these programs, we call them curricula. Then we submit them to the Commission for University Education, because all universities are accredited by the Commission for University Education in Kenya. And the role of Commission for University Education is to ensure, one, that standards are achieved, and they have got guidelines to guide the universities so that they ensure that those standards are achieved. And that is the reason why once we have developed these programs and courses, then we send them to the Commission for University of Education, which then now looks at these programs against the standards which they have developed. Do we meet the standards? If they don't meet the standards, they bring them back to us, tell us, revise this, include this, subtract this, and so on. So it is a lengthy process.
Yes, and I still want to tie that with this question, because looking at tertiary institutions and more so universities, we've seen that, of course, research is one of the key aspects when it comes to varsity education. And is it quite thorough, looking at what we are churning out now? Is it quite thorough? Because at the end of the day, we want to churn out people who not only can continue that research, but it can help them in life. Case in point, there is this varsity student who has started here in Kenya, who has started making phone cables. That is something, some knowledge and perhaps technical skills that he acquired from the varsity that he was in. Are we thorough looking at the learning institutions that we have?
Yes, thank you very much, Njue, for that question. And it's very, very important. And perhaps one of the major reasons why universities were created is to undertake research. Indeed, there are three main areas of focus in universities. One is teaching, the second one is research, and then the next one is community involvement or community development. Those are the three areas. And teaching is basic because, you know, it's a question of imparting knowledge into students and then expecting the students to, in a manner that those students would be able to apply that knowledge later on. The second one, which is research, is one of the key issues because that is what the students would use to develop new knowledge and then add that new knowledge to the existing body of literature or knowledge that already exists. So research is a key issue. To understand, you know, the process of research and the reason why a lot of, you know, in a lot of situations, it may not be easy for either universities or other, you know, institutions to be able to address this issue of research, you know, conclusively, is because research, one, is very expensive. Okay, it is very expensive because you need a lot of money to be able to, you know, use when you are carrying out research in the designing and then in the practical aspect of data collection, in the practical aspect of testing, you know, and so on and so forth. And specifically, if you look at the area of research that you're talking about, look at health, for example. And in the contemporary times that we live in now, we have the COVID-19 situation. We just struck us last year in March, 2020 in March. And it is glad to note that we have come up with vaccines. You know, different companies have come up with vaccines. It took some time from the time COVID-19 struck to the time when the first vaccine, you know, was discovered. That was a process of research, and so much money went through that, you know, to produce that particular vaccine. And now we have so many of them, which is good. But then the process that it goes through is an expensive process that requires a lot of money. Now, and that is where the government of Kenya comes in. Because the government has set up different research agencies which are responsible for, you know, giving, for example, there is the National Research Fund. There is, you know, there are so many other agencies that deal with, you know, disbursing government money for various purposes, including research. And as to how universities use this money, and their own money, because we also have to have, as universities, budgets for, you know, for research to be able to, you know, entice our students to be able to do the research. So the availability of that money then determines the level of research that is being churned out of universities. In our university, we have established an innovation and incubation center. And the reason for this innovation and incubation center is to be able to garner or collect ideas from our students and, of course, indeed our staff. But the primary focus is our students because they have a lot of information. in the public domain, we are aware that different applications and facilities like Facebook, the internet, and so on and so forth, they all came from students playing around with ideas.
That's true.
And this is why we are encouraging our students at the Management University of Africa to come up with ideas. Then we process them through that system.
Okay. Let me just interject. You've talked about an innovation. I would like us to kind of stick to that, the innovation part. Because at the end of the day, we are getting so many graduates who do not have jobs. So we are ending up having job seekers rather than having job creators.
Right.
You've talked about innovation. Perhaps you can touch on what exactly you've been doing so that you ensure that as more, you don't churn out job seekers, you churn out job creators.
Yes, thank you very much. From innovation point of view, and innovation, basically the process of innovation is a very simple process to state. Maybe to implement it is more difficult.
Yes.
Yeah. It's the process of identifying or coming up with new ideas. And the process of coming up with new ideas means somebody has to be alert to the environment that somebody is living in, somebody is working in, so that they can question why certain things are happening the way they're happening. Instead of being a sort of a process minder, sort of person who watches the processes as they go on and not necessarily noticing whatever is missing in between, the gaps that are missing in between. That is where innovation begins, because you need to identify new ideas, you need to identify new needs, you need to identify why certain things are not happening, right? And that process means that you have to be inquisitive. And you have to be very, very attentive to the environment. So once those ideas, we encourage our students, once they identify the new ideas, and that is why we have set up the Innovation Center, so that the new ideas that they have come up with, we can then test them in a certain environment. There's a process that we go through. Okay, there's a model that we have created called the stage gate model. It's an old known model, but it's very good in terms of sieving out ideas so that you can tell the possible ones and the ones which are not possible. And then after that, once we tell the possible ones, then we create what we call models. Okay, models which can then be tested, and then we have the testing environment. And then after we've tested them, then the ones which turn out to be close to being commercially viable, okay? And commercial viability is determined by acceptance in the market, okay? If they can be accepted in the market, what is the cost of rolling them out, and how will it also coexist with other similar or type of models and so on and so on, or products and so on. And then after that, then we incubate them. Okay. Then we incubate. Incubation now is where we now find out whether they can really stand, the practical environment where they will be competing with other ideas.
Indeed, and still on that, after the incubation, I've seen some of the university partner with even companies and even some donors from other countries to fund. Perhaps from the incubation now to the actualization of either a project or something, that to make sure that this job seeker becomes a job creator. Have you had some partnership, and have they been fruitful? Because some of the university I've seen University of Nairobi, the Geospatial and Space Center has partnered with some foreign guys from, I think it's the United States of America, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. I've seen Egerton in the agriculture and JQuat in terms of technology. Have you done that?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Yes, at the Management University of Africa, we have partners at various levels and in various, as I said, we are a management and leadership university, niched university. So we have partners in leadership and management. We have partners in the specific areas. And leadership and management, by the way, is not just at the high level leadership and management. It is also broken down into the various business elements, for example, marketing, for example, strategic management, for example, other areas, and so on, ICT, and so on and so forth. But importantly, back to your question, we have partners. We have partners in Japan or from Japan. We also have partners from Belgium, who are supporting our innovation and incubation center. We have, through this partnership, we have student exchange programs. Student exchange programs, particularly with Japan, is working very well for us.
Okay, just kindly hold the thought. Of course, we'll have a more comprehensive report on the same. It's quite a tragic event, but we'll be following. We are keeping a keen eye on that. And just before we usher in 12 p.m., I'm of course joined by Professor Washington Okeyo. We want to wrap it up. Role of research, and more specifically in universities going forward, because everything is changing each and every day, and when it comes to digitization.
Yes, thank you very much, Njue. I think, like I said earlier, research is a very significant component of learning, and because it leads to new knowledge and application and ideas. And going forward, universities fundamentally must address the research issue, and they must ensure that the students that are churned out, that graduate from the universities, are capable in carrying out research on their own. Of course, what is happening in the universities now, as I said, there are two types of research. There is the theoretical, and then there's the applied research. Theoretical, obviously, is for using in the university, it's for students to use in their university work and academics and so on and so forth. But the application part of it is now for eventual, when they actually end up graduating from the university. And that should be the main focus of the universities, in encouraging the students to come up with application-oriented research, so that they are able to, once they are absorbed in the job market, whether they are self-employed, whether they are employed by other organizations and institutions, that they are able to apply the research concepts. So that if, for example, a graduate is employed in a business that is concerned with sales and so on, they can look at the situation in that sales environment. And if the sales are going down, they can find out through research why sales are going down, by coming up and narrowing down to certain factors that they suspect could be affecting the sales environment.
In 30 seconds, being the Vice Chancellor of Management University of Africa, what are you doing different to ensure that the students or the students who enter the job market as job creators as opposed to job seekers? In 30 seconds.
Yes, I think one of the important things that our university is doing is to ensure that we attach students outside the university. As they do their various courses, towards the end of their courses, we make sure that we have what we call industrial attachment. Industrial attachment enables students to practice the skills, that the theoretical skills that they have learned in the universities practically in the business environment. And they choose where they want to do that, because they are the ones who know what is relevant in terms of what they have, what they want to apply their knowledge in. Then number two, we also have what we call community service. Community service is a process where students identify communities or institutions and organizations that require services, and then they volunteer. The students go out there and volunteer to provide the services. The idea is to introduce the students gradually into the job market, so that they know the realities of the job market. So industrial attachment will equip them with the ability to be able to test for themselves how to work in an office, how to work in a factory, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Well said. That is Professor Washington Okeyo, who is the Vice Chancellor of MUA University. There, we were looking at matters higher learning and how to incorporate the ever-changing dynamic market from job seekers to job creators. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Njue. Lensa Odingo has been our sign language interpreter, and also Susan Thuku, who you can see on the bottom of your screen. Thank you so much for watching. Let's continue this conversation on social media. I'm now giving rise to Nancy Okware with Tamrini.